Today we're going to talk about what can we learn from science whenever it comes to teamwork. And this is going to be the first of 2 episodes on this specific topic. And these 2 videos are a part of a bigger series about startup teamwork that I'm doing for this YouTube channel, 7 Days of XYZ, where we explore a new topic every week related to companies and technology. But first, let's talk about why this question in the first place. So the reason why I like science is that science is like having the opportunity to not only live your own life, but kind of see the lives of everyone else accumulated over time. So there's some really interesting studies right now where people they're putting trackers on people in teams and see how they are communicating with each other inside of the team. For instance, like in a call center, and then they see how people are communicating with each other and how that communication is actually affecting the performance of the team. And the cool thing is that scientists have found that only by looking at the communication structures in the team, they can predict which teams are going to perform well in, for instance, like a hackathon. So this is not only like science in terms of like some people doing something in a laboratory, like an experiment or anything like this. This is like real cases, solving real business problems, like creating value inside of a business. And in those contexts, they have found that the communication has that big of an impact. So I think one of the really cornerstones and the thing that I want to talk about, in this episode, I'm gonna break this science of teams into 2 episodes. The thing I want to talk about today is the communication part, and more specifically like the variables that I find very interesting and how you can kind of solve them in a startup environment. And I've been talking about this, throughout the week, but I feel like, this is worth repeating because I'd rather kind of give you the things that I really find valuable and give you several instances of those things that I find valuable rather than, going super broad, telling you about 29 factors from science. And then some of those examples would be in a startup environment, maybe not the most important things and not things that I have personal experience with, seeing having a huge benefit. So, it's going to be, filtered through whatever experience I have working as a talent manager for startups at a business incubator, but also running startup projects myself for the past 4 years. So the first important variable that we can learn from science is progress. Progress is something that is insanely important. There are several studies showing that progress is one of the most important things whenever it comes to fulfillment in a job. If you look at a statistic by LinkedIn where they ask people what are reasons to why you are staying at your current company, people are saying they're giving reasons kind of personal growth reasons. They feel like they're growing inside of that company and making progress. And the way you can kind of, show the progress in a startup environment is just thinking about that in the communication. So I've been talking throughout this week about something called daily scrums. And what a daily scrum is basically 3 questions that you each, kind of mention in the team, every day. And those questions are what did you do yesterday? What will you do today? And is there any obstacles in your way? And by default, people will be I did this yesterday, and will feel progress when answering such questions. Another thing that I talked about throughout this week is the weekly review. The weekly review could be a meeting that you have every week, but it could also be just an email that you're sending out with the goals that you have for the week and the progress made towards those goals throughout the week. And this is super important in a startup environment because the nature of a startup is that, you have tons of failure. It's you're trying to do something, completely different from what other companies are doing in your niche, and you're trying to change, you know, society in some sense, like the way that people are solving their problems. You want to change that, and by default there's going to be tons of reaction, failures, and stuff like that. So I think it's important to show, you know, the progress that has been made throughout the week, and related to that, like thinking about goals both in terms of outcomes, like we want to, you know, sell to, you know, 20 customers by the year's end. You know, that's an outcome goal, but it's important also to have goals that are like actually trickle down from those 20 sales to like, this week we made 100 phone calls to prospective clients. That's also progress. Like, it's progress starting to move towards your goal, not only reaching the goal, but the progress of going towards your goal is, you know, it's super important to kind of mention these like weekly reviews, daily scrums, and kind of lift up in the company, because it's very easy to just like look at the outcomes of your work and then, you know, not seeing the actual activities every day that are done in order to reach the next step. Another thing is engagement, and the way that scientists have looked at this is like the study that I talked about before, where they put trackers on people and see how they communicate inside of a team. And what they have found is that the teams that have kind of an equal distribution, and this shouldn't even be something that we have to find by science, but like, if people are talking in roughly equal terms inside of a team, meaning like if you have a team meeting and people are like, you know, there's 4 people in the team meeting and you're talking like 25% each, that team is gonna be performing better than the team where one person is talking 50% and the rest of the people are like splitting 150% among 3 people. So, I mean, this is kind of obvious. Like, there is a story with Bill Gates. He's going to Saudi Arabia, and, you know, they're asking him like, what can we do in order to, you know, prepare ourselves for, I don't remember the year, but it's like, what can we do to prepare for the future? And he's like, well, if you're only gonna use like half of the population, the male population, I mean, you could, you know, start using the female population too, which is like, I mean, it's just obvious. Like, if you have people on the team, everyone should be kind of involved in the decision making, because like, in general, people together are smarter than one person alone. Another super important factor found in science is support. And support is just like being there for each other when things are not going well. And that's also coming back into the scrum that I've been suggesting throughout this week. You know, having these questions: what did you do yesterday? What are you going to do today? And are there any obstacles in your way? By default, like when people have been, you know, kind of failing the goal yesterday, and also like if there's any obstacles in your way, you kind of create, you know, the opportunity, you kind of lift up things that are not going well, and then people can get support on those things. And it's important to mention this, like, so Google has something called Objectives and Key Results, and it's basically a goal setting system for companies, pioneered in Intel by a person called John Doerr. But, you know, that aside, what they basically have is a template for goal setting. And what they say is that these goals should be of the character that some of them are gonna get failed. I mean, that's like, if you're not failing on some of the goals that you're putting up for your business, that is a bad sign in itself. That's like, you're not stretching far enough, and when it comes to setting goals, in my personal opinion. So like, this means that a part of the goals will have to be failed in order for you to have ambitious goals. And, you know, in that environment, you need to create support for people that have the goals where they fail. It's nothing about them as a person. It's just like, you know, the goal might have been too high in the first place. The fourth kind of factor that they talk about in science is structure. And I mean, structure is obviously super important. And one important factor here is like clarifying each role in the team. I think in the beginning you can have like a situation where people are like, everyone is kind of doing everything, because that's the kind of natural thing to do in the very beginning, because you might not know like what you kind of are best at doing inside of this new team. But after a while, it makes sense to kind of clarify the roles, and the recommendation I have here is to kind of like specify the roles in a document. So you have like a document in your company where you're specifying like what is the role, what is the purpose of the role, and stuff like that, to just like clear up the various roles inside of the company. So those were 4 factors of effective teamwork that you can find in different research studies, like progress, engagement, support, and structure. And the 3 activities you can do in order to kind of implement these 4 factors and kind of do better in terms of those 4 factors to create effective teams is like the team review, the weekly review, where you say like, here was the goals, here was the progress that we made towards those goals. The daily scrum, where you say like, what did you do yesterday, what are you going to do today, and is there any obstacles in your way? And then the 3rd thing, clarifying the roles inside of the company. And it doesn't have to be like complicated or anything like that. You just like write down what people are supposed to do, just in broad terms, like 1 goal per person or something like that. Okay, thank you for listening all the way to the end. This was a bit longer, this episode, than most of the other episodes, but I hope you had a good time. So I have a question for you who kind of decided to stick with me to the very bitter end. What are some activities that you think your company or any company could implement in order to do better in these 4 areas that I talked about, that is kind of apparent from science of teamwork? Do you have any examples? Just leave a comment below, and I will be happy to read it and talk more with you.